Hello, animators and artists. Jake Hollander is a supervising director, episodic director, and all-around animation creator working in LA. His recent screen credits include directing on Krapopolis, Duncanville and HouseBroken, as well as storyboard work on Samurai Rabbit, the Usagi Chronicles. Jake joins us today to talk about his personal project, a series of shorts drawn in Storyboard Pro called Yolk Brothers, or Yolk Bros. So, Jake, welcome to the stream.
Thanks for having me. Should I say something more clever? Like, yeah.
That works. Can you introduce yourself with your name and your path to your current role?
Path to my current role. Wow. Oh, just like a simple question. No big deal. Just your name and your life. I'm Jake Hollander. Yeah, I'm Jake Hollander. My path. You know, you always ask me this question. Everyone does. And I'm like, okay, path. How'd I get there? Well, do you mean like after high school? What was the path? Or like when I moved out to LA? Or like how far are we going?
Okay, someone just graduated high school and they want to know how to get to where you are now. How did you get there?
Okay, so first you have to figure out your life. I don't know. I didn't know anything after high school. I just hated school. I hated everything. I wanted to run away and be like a backpacking trailblazer for Knowles. That was my goal in life. And then my parents and I talked a lot about how they wanted me to go to college and do something. And since I practically failed out of high school pretty much, they implored me to find something I liked that I can pursue. And I liked Shrek. Shrek was a cool movie. And I was like, I like games. I played too much World of Warcraft. So I was like, maybe I'll just model for games or that, right? So I went to college for 3D modeling. And I wasn't a big fan of 3D. And after school, I kind of just tried to get some art jobs. And I was doing graphic design for this company in like on the East Coast when I was living in New York. And they kind of they like laid me off. And I was like, oh, well, that was great. And then I went on a birthright trip. For anyone who doesn't know, it's like a trip to Israel for Jews, and it's paid and you learn stuff. And I met somebody on that trip, and they lived in LA. And then they were like, you should just come out to LA and you should just figure it out. So I came out there and I was doing like odd Craigslist jobs. And then I got back in contact with somebody. Well, I've always been in contact with them, but when I interned at Cartoon Network, I met a PA there named Matt Long, who explained to me what storyboarding was and like what they actually do in cartoons. And then I was like, maybe I'll try this thing. And I did a lot of Newgrounds animations, and I loved it so much that I started doing more boarding, right? And then I kind of stopped doing boarding a little bit because I got this job to like do fire and life safety systems and motion graphics for this company for 2 years. And then I was like, no, I need something more creative. And then I went really hard into my portfolio again. And then it's a long story, Mike. And then
you've hit every single part of like the elder millennial director
arc, right?
Like origin story, because you've got like Newgrounds, you've got Shrek. This is amazing.
Yeah, and then so after I left that job, when a friend that I met through my wife was working at this company doing like STEM animations for the STEM educational material. So like they had a website where they teach like how to code in Ruby or something. And then we'd make a little story and I would do all the art for it. And then I got really obsessed with that. And I was like, I need to get back into this, right? So in like the 6 months I was at that job, I went super hard into making my storyboard portfolio. And then after that company shut down, I got extremely lucky and got my next job in animation 2 weeks later. And honestly, it's all timing when I got my first job. But directing something I feel like everyone always wants to do, because they always want, like, if you make your own project, you're basically directing, you know, you're directing your own project. But like when it comes to like animation industry directing, it's all communication skills, and it's all like being able to, you know, do all that stuff. So I knew that's something I wanted to do. And when I was at Nick, an old director I had on my first job was like, "Hey, we're looking for directors. Do you know anyone?" And I was like, "Me?" And then he kind of stuck his neck out for me and was like, "You got to give this guy a chance. Like, he's really good. I can bet my like word on it." And that was Duncanville, and it worked out really well. And I've been directing ever since. So it's my long-winded journey arc, Mike.
No, I mean, and I think also like what you mentioned too, that like a lot of directing is communication and talking to other people in a production. It is not always easy to go from like I can draw something to I can talk about how I drew this, or like what different elements are going on here, telling somebody else, okay, I need a little bit more of this. Because everybody's worked with clients who've said, "Oh, can you make that pop more?" And it's like that's not anything.
No, it really isn't. And then you're like, "What does pop mean to you?" And then they're like,
In contrast,
what does it mean to me? Like in their head, you can feel the internal dialogue of what do the words I say mean?
Yeah. But like talking about like line quality and value, contrast, like these are not these are things you need to sort of build a vocabulary up around.
Yeah, but also it's weird because like, you know, when you're working on a show, you take notes from a lot of different sources. So the notes from like a non-artist and an artist and a creative person who doesn't do art and vice versa, like terminology and semantics mean so many different things. And sometimes even when you hear something, you have to then re-clarify it in your own understanding of what that language means. So like when I get a note from somebody and I've been working with them for a while, like I kind of know what they mean, right? But if I'm working with somebody or a showrunner or somebody who has an idea of what they want and it's like kind of a new thing, sometimes you should ask like, what does that mean to you? Like, what's your communication language? Should I draw a picture to help understand the situation, or should we talk it out more and then like reiterate it so that we're all in agreement, you know, because notes are really important to address as best as you can the first time off so that you don't have to go back and readdress it. So yeah, communication language is pretty much everything in my opinion.
So beyond your work with studios, why do you feel that it's important as an artist to work on personal projects?
I know every artist is different, but I feel like we're artists for a reason. We have, everyone has a story to tell, whether it's like a story that's written or drawn or painted or anything. And if you just keep that inside, you're just probably not going to have a very good time in the long run. It's kind of like this impulse that you need. And I think having your own projects gives you like an avenue to just work within your own realm of fun and messages. Like a lot of the work I do, a lot of my own projects are things I want to see more in the world. And if I don't do it the way I want or the way I see it in my head, then I guess my own opinions are left up to interpretation or something that nobody even gets to know or I get to share with them, you know? So I think it's, you know, probably all of artists' own little soapbox, I guess, talk about and express how they feel about things. And if you don't have that,
so let's get into it then. For someone who's never seen Yolk Bros before, how do you describe the series?
Well, the tagline is the wholesome adventures of two bros trying to yoke, you know? So it's about the foundational theme of the Yolk Bros is positive male relationships with the traditional masculine approaches to things, right? Like working out and being buff and is associated with a lot of like a lot of like toxic, like almost like negative connotations, like, oh, that guy's a beefhead or whatever, right? But like, you know, you go to a gym and you're like, hey man, can you spot me? And like the buff dude just like walks over and is like, sure, whatever you need, you know? And like, there's always a duality to everything. And my buddy Lester and I, who created Yolk Bros together, we talked about it and joked about it at the gym. And, you know, you come into the gym and you're just like, maybe you're a little insecure. Maybe you're like, oh, I don't work out a lot. I know what I'm doing. Everyone's going to think I'm a loser or like make fun of me. But everyone's always supportive. And like there's a beauty in that support. Like whatever gender or sex you are, like if you're working on yourself, people appreciate that and they want to help you, you know? And I want to believe that, right? I want to believe that that's how it works. And I've seen a lot of that work. So when we made Yolk Bros, it started off as just like a fun little joke. And we threw in like this crazy adventure because it started as a comic. And then, of course, because I'm obsessed, I was like, why don't I animate it too? And so I started doing that. And it just became like this hilarious thing that we would just laugh about all the time and make comics and make animations on. And it was just a lot of fun. And the messages meant a lot, you know? Like maybe don't judge a book by its cover. Maybe people have wounds that they're trying to get through. Maybe there's this like this thing that they thought had to go with working out or being strong or what their concept of strong or masculinity is. And maybe it's not toxic. Maybe it's good. Maybe you can express your feelings and be vulnerable, and that's still strong, right? Maybe you can deadlift 500 pounds and also hug kittens. Like both of those things can be true. So that's kind of what our passion and drive for Yolk Bros has always been.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, right? Because you have these characters that are a mix of like gym culture and also sort of eggs. What sort of drew you to like combining those two things?
Honestly, it's as stupid as just like we kept saying yolk a lot, and we were like, what if they were eggs? And what if like we were eggs on an adventure and we're constantly challenged with being lazy about going to the gym, but also wanting to get ripped? And it's just hilarious that they're eggs. Like it's just as simple as that. It's funny that they're eggs.
These very round, squishy characters.
I know. And they're easy to animate too. What's up, Mike? Sorry.
Do you want to talk about their names?
Yeah, sure. It's Sunny and Benny because of Sunny Side Up and Eggs Benedict, and that was the inspiration for their names.
Yeah.
That's it.
I remember you first seeing like the Yolk Bros as like an Easter egg in the short you produced with your wife, My Wife the Monster. What originally led you to start this project and then revisit it?
So it's interesting because it's like I upload these things and then we disappeared and then stopped uploading it, but like it never really disappeared. It's just, you know, Lester and I work full-time jobs, you know, and there's a lot of like events in your life, and sometimes when things get busy, you have to like prioritize other things, and it kind of like fell off a little bit, but we were writing the whole time. Like we decided we wanted to focus a lot of attention on writing a pilot, which we finished. We finished the pilot. So it's like a 22-minute episode of the Yolk Bros, and I started boarding it out, and we were going to do like a 2D 3D combo in Blender and Harmony, and we're still working on that. And in the interim, since like I love that immediate satisfaction of doing something and then putting it out there, these little animations really help, like the comics, the animations. And, I'm also working on the second episode of My Wife Monster as well. But like, these are so short to do, and you can saturate meaningful story in such a short amount of time with situations like this, and it's really fun to do. So the TLDR was busy, was focusing on the pilot for the Yolk Bros, and then I was like, God, I missed those shorts. They were really fun, and so then I started revisiting them.
Yeah, you messaged me saying that like the recent Yolk Bros shorts were made using Storyboard Pro. I find these short clips are like just past the boundary between like animatic and limited animation. What do you find like interesting or useful about this approach?
Well, even just looking at it in the file, like time to get crazy obsessed with this program because I love it. But like when you use something like Harmony, you can have a lot of different timelines of animation occurring at the same time. But when you have something very simplistic like the Yolk Bros, like it's like I set it up so that I want to see the exaggeration of a single character. And for that, I really don't need multiple timelines. So the layers give me a lot of versatility in playing around with both what I can focus on and what I don't need to be excessive about, right? So with Storyboard Pro, all I need is one canvas to do all of this, because my biggest focus is how to have fun with the facial animation. And when you really look at everything that's happening in most of these scenes, there's only one thing moving at a time. And whenever you have something that doesn't involve multiple layers of movement, like you only really need one timeline. So with Storyboard Pro, I have the one timeline I need. I have all the versatility of the audio, and I do the audio in what's that program called? Like I do the recordings in Audition, and then I usually just bring in free sound into Storyboard Pro and then adjust it as needed. And if ever I have a levels problem, I take it back into Audition. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to take us on a tour of this Yolk Bros short in Storyboard Pro?
Sure. I mean, it's pretty simple in theory. There's not like a lot going on here, but like just a Storyboard Pro like lesson on efficiency. I usually have my BG layers on the BG, right? And I always break everything up as simple as I can. So it's usually the props, anything that's moving, and I keep them on different layers. And then I kind of work off of that, make sure my layers are named the same so I can easily animate.
I love the sense of scale too in this episode.
Yeah, well, it's really fun because the juxtaposition of how small Sunny and Benny are to everyone else is really fun for me, because like Sunny and Benny are how me and my buddy feel when we're in a gym with like everyone who's buffer than us, and that visual juxtaposition makes it hilarious to me, right? And a lot of these older videos I did way quicker, like especially when they're longer, I usually like omit some background elements. But my favorite thing is to just put like a really weird cathedral-esque like Art Deco background in the thing, because it just makes me laugh. And they're just fun to work with. So I like to add this like very bizarre like aesthetic to it. It's pretty fun.
I also like the contrast too between that very like large buff anatomical weightlifter and then like your little egg dude with the little butt sticking out. It's very good. Yeah,
they spend a lot of time on leg day, you know, so they're very caked up.
You can't skip leg day.
Very caked up. I think some of the best responses for the Yolk Bros is how much people talk about their butts. It makes me laugh so much. And I always enjoy it. It's really funny. But I'm highly amused. So yeah. So overall, you know, you just want to like layer the file so that it's all there, all clear, all organized. And compositionally, I like to keep everything very clear, like where people are looking. And that's also just storyboarding stuff. That's also just like storytelling stuff. And there is an interesting thing that I learned while doing the Yolk Bros, because I'm so used to like long format storytelling, where like in a scene, it's just a piece of a bigger picture. Whereas these are like, how do you tell a story in 15 to 40 seconds tops, right? And a lot of my early videos are just like them talking to each other, like, hey buddy, like, what are you doing? And then the other guy's like, I don't know. And it was just very uninteresting, if that describes it. Uninteresting in the sense that I didn't quite know how to tell the stories I wanted to yet. And like, I spent a month making one every day and trying to like master short form storytelling. And it's really hard. Like, it's really hard to master. And I won't even say that I am even a master of it yet. I don't think anyone can be. You like do one thing that you're like, I did it. And then the next one you're like, what? But just making sure that it's very succinct is the biggest thing. And with Storyboard Pro, like, again, like with the storyboarding process, since I'm so accustomed to it, I can write like a sentence, feel it out when I board it, and be like, well, what's missing? And then a lot of times, like I'll show it to Lester or Maggie, my wife, and be like, what is missing here? And then it's usually either it's not absurd enough to like hit the joke, or like it's always like a resolution or a climax that's an issue. Like, the conflict's kind of sometimes the easiest thing to think about, because it's just the thing that you're starting with. Like, oh, they're working out and somebody wants to use their equipment. Like, what do you do, right? How do you build that situation? And like an example in this one is like, I really wanted to show anger and vulnerability, and why people get angry, and why you would get angry about something as trivial as not working in with somebody, right? And you know, maybe somebody's having a bad day. Maybe they're just not used to being treated nicely. You know, maybe they don't know how to understand what they're feeling, and that ends up being a 45-second short that I then have to clean up. But yeah, so Storyboard Pro makes it easy, just like to get my idea down, rough it out as quickly as possible, and you know, get the timing down, because in things like these, timing is everything. And especially in short form content, especially for the internet, you know, everyone talks about that 2 to 3 seconds you have to get somebody's attention or draw them into a story. And I mean, you can have a lot of fun with that. You can have a lot of fun figuring that out. And I think part of that problem solving makes it fun, and having something that helps you get there as quickly as possible makes it a lot easier in an already hard situation.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting too. Like, if your canvas is usually like a 11-minute, 22-minute, or 44-minute animated program, you have a very different set of problems to solve than if you're just trying to fill 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, it's really true. And you know, any kind of story needs pacing, and the hard thing is knowing when to slow things down and when to speed things up. And one of the most fun things about the way I like to draw the Yolk Bros is because they're so simple shape wise. I like to squash and stretch the hell out of them. I think it's so funny when they have crazy animated faces that makes their situations more absurd, or it builds more tension. And there's like a lot of ways to build things. And it's visually fun when they're squash and stretching a lot, and it also makes it more fun to watch, and it makes that part less serious. But until they have to speak their lines of like, okay, now it's serious, maybe they don't squash and stretch as much. So there's like elements that you can do everywhere to tell that short form and to build up the emotional aspects of it. Because you still need all of that, in my opinion. You know, you need to have drama, attention, like breath, all of that stuff. Yeah.
I think that's one of the strengths of having a very like simple character design, is that does give you the freedom to do a lot more with like squash and stretch and animation, that you might be more constrained by if you had more anatomical or more detailed characters.
Yeah. And that's why I like to keep these very simple, because, you know, I'm animating this like right now on my own, all of them. So if I make things too complicated in my boards, I have to animate that. And like, ideally, if I have an idea, I want to do it in like, I want to be able to animate it in like a day or two. So if it takes longer than that, then it kind of affects my backlog of like what I want to upload and stuff. But like some things are worth spending time on. And I just made like another like Magic the Gathering video that's coming on Friday. And that's like all colored in. It's like all color. And I was like, why? And then I thought, it's because it looks dope. And I took the extra day or two to do it. But some things you don't need like amazing art to tell if you have a really good concept that you enjoy. So it's pretty fun in that regard.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the art style for these shorts. How do you describe like the animation style, your approach to animating these characters, in terms of like how much animation you use and when?
So ideally, I want to use as limited animation as I can, but it never works out that way because I love doing squash and stretch so much. So like, I approach an idea with like, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? And then in the course of doing that, I end up spending so much time making their mouths go crazy or, you know, doing this or that. And it's never as simple as I imagine it, but I try to factor that in as best as I can so that I know how much time it's going to take. Because there's like reality and expectations and like what you come into thinking about something. And I've been doing this long enough to know that if I think something's going to take me an hour, I have to expect it to take 2 hours. Just, you have to do it because it's never as simple in your head as it is when you actually approach it.
Another thing too that I've noticed about these shorts is these are made in sort of a vertical video, TikTok or Instagram Reels style. Did you find that was also an adjustment too in terms of like how you frame shots and set up layouts?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. God, you always have such good questions, Mike. But yeah, 100%. Because when you have a horizontal layout, a canvas, you have to build your compositions around that. And there's a lot more to draw. And everything takes longer. And all of your shot setups are like conceptually different because they just have an entirely different vibe, I guess is the way to describe it for me. Because there's something about like a phone that is like philosophically it feels less serious, right? And you can do a lot with that, right? But like it's something that's so accessible. You're not sitting on the couch, you're not like getting popcorn, you're not gonna sit down and like prepare to watch a bunch of stuff on your phone like you're watching a movie or a show. And that lends itself to the type of stories you tell in a way. And like I don't think I could personally sit there for like 30 minutes watching a vertical movie, right? Maybe it's conditioning, maybe it's just how I think about sitting down and getting ready to watch something. But like the stories can still be told, but I just think they're conceptually and emotionally and philosophically different when the composition is vertical, because it's how you're watching it in that vertical rather than the fact that it's vertical. So when I approach it, I think more about what the characters are going to look like in that composition and focus entirely on the versatility of structural hierarchy of the character, because there's a beauty of having a vertical, and if a character is higher in the frame, where in like a canvas composition, building height and power in the scene or weakness in the scene or a dynamic in the scene is a little more nuanced because of your canvas, right? But with a vertical, you can immediately establish an emotional visual, like nearly instantly. A character can be looking up like that, and a character can be above them, and you're immediately like, oh shit, like that is a power dynamic, right? So you can play a lot with emotions that way and just visual aesthetic that way. So I love to play around with that a lot. And also you can make things feel bigger. You were talking about scale earlier, and scale is a lot of fun to play with in vertical format, because you can draw things like, oh look, there's an artifact here. It's so big, and your vertical format and your character is like right here looking up at it, and you're like, whoa, that's pretty big. What does it mean? There's a god chicken on it, right? Who knows, right? Whatever is on there. And then it creates like this magical kind of universe vibe of just how big things can feel and how weird and interesting they can become. So there's a lot that's my favorite part about the vertical format, and there's a lot to play with in that. So that's kind of what makes it a different perspective when you approach it, if that makes sense.
We got a question from the audience that I wanted to bring to you. So the question is, did you always intend for Yolk Bros to be a series? I keep like Super Mario Brothersing it, like you see it and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna autocomplete that to Brothers.
The Plumber Brothers. No, I kind of. This is kind of how I am. I think it's more a personal thing. Whenever I have a story that I like, I immediately have to create a world for it and a journey, and like, what are they doing? Like, why do they exist? And when you do that, every freaking time, it turns into something bigger than you can handle. And then, so like a lot of the Yolk Bros videos I like to imagine as situations in their world that they're experiencing, right, as they live their lives. And the overall story is the comic. So the comic is the bigger story, and we're basing a lot of like what we're doing with the pilot a lot on that. And so it'll wrap itself up into like this interesting, weird, ridiculous storyline. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, in my opinion, at least.
From your point of view, like, what was the most challenging or creatively interesting part of like working on Yolk Bros?
Challenging, creative? Oh, easily like telling succinct stories in a short amount of time. For me, Yolk Bros was the first attempt I've ever had on animating things in a very quick, short time frame. And it comes with a lot of challenges, because my instinct's always to do more. And with Yolk Bros and just the idea of just getting things done, because I like to see things finished, it's easily just trying to do things under a minute. Yeah, because like I aim for each Yolk Bros to be about 15 to 30 seconds, and then they end up being like 45 seconds, and I'm just like, great, good times.
Yeah. You talked a little bit earlier about like how a large part about your role as a director is communication. Does your experience as a director and like having to communicate on that level influence the decisions that you make working on personal projects?
Um, does being a director influence how I approach working on personal projects? Yeah, it gives me a realistic perspective on what I can accomplish. Because like 90% of my role as a director is making sure I know what I can do in the time period I can do it, and what and how to manage that. So like making sure that like the notes from the showrunner and my supervising director are all hit, and they are done as effectively and great as I can make it, right? So when I bring that to my personal projects, I'm like, oh, I want this to like, I want 90 people in my shot, and it's a crowd, and it's going to be crazy. And I'm like, that's not going to work because of the actual time frame you want to get this done in. And like being a director gives me realistic expectations of my approach. And because I'm like so like anal about doing things in a time management efficient way, I know that like save it for another video, like do that in another video, right? Make it its own thing. Don't add a million things to this one thing and then it'd take forever, right? And I did that. Like I do have a horizontal video that I made that's like 2.5 minutes, right? And I like drew it on a plane because I was really inspired by this concept. And I did that like 2 years ago. And just cleaning it up alone is an insane feat for 2.5 minutes. And it's because I did that. I made crowds. I made a huge action part. I made explosions. And one day I'll finish it, but like it's not realistic for like the format in which I'm aiming to accomplish these stories, right? So it gives me realistic expectations. That's the TLDR.
Yeah, one of my biggest pet peeves when like looking at trade publications where you have an interview with a writer or a director who's normally working in live action but decided to do like an animated project or was picked up for an animated project, is there's always a quote that's like, in animation, we can do anything. In animation, we have an unlimited special effects budget. And it's like, well, okay, but like not if you have to animate a crowd scene, or like not if you have like the camera moving as the character walks towards the camera. Like there are certain things, especially in 2D animation, that suddenly become very difficult to do that you don't get for free.
Yeah, I think live action writers should definitely just learn a little bit about the animation process before thinking about some of the ways they approach writing, because a lot of their ideas are great, and a lot of the stories are great, but what like you said, there are facets to it where like writing epic battle happens here, or and then everyone started dancing. Yeah, exactly. It's like things like that are great, but like you need to know what your budget is. You need to know what your resources look like, because you can do a lot with a little, but like because good story is good story in my opinion, and you don't need a lot of flair to create that. I think flair makes something unique and fun, but like not everybody has arcane budget. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to kind of explain that sometimes if you don't experience the feeling of drawing 60 characters in a shot. But I feel like a lot of the live action writers who listen and have that discussion definitely understand once you explain it to them, or explain to them just the resources, because it's not like everyone's like, well, I don't care, make it work, right? Because at the end of the day, you do have a budget, and if you exceed that budget, you're not gonna have you're gonna like get halfway up the hill and be like, oh well, we're not gonna make it to the top, so we gotta.
And every format too has its own advantages and limitations. Like there are certain things that are easy to do in live action film, but also certain things like you need to make sure that if you want to have a crane shot, you better have a crane with you.
Yeah. And I think that's what's funny about animation, is because it's like, well, they can just draw it. They can draw anything, So
right.
it's kind of.
But then you get into things like line mileage, or how many backgrounds you need, or hey, do you need like suddenly 3D rendered assets? In which case, someone needs to model those and then light them.
Yep, pretty much, and it just becomes an insane feat. Yeah. But it's fun.
I mean, in contrast to it, I think what's cool about like Yolk Bros is you have these two characters who are very distinctive but also very simple, and I think that also makes it very easy for a single person to actually make these shorts.
Yeah, they're definitely designed pretty efficiently. They're literally circles, so it's really easy to draw a circle a lot. And like, I think the hardest part about the animation process is I really like to have fun with their mouth shapes, and they're, like I was saying like earlier, they're squash and stretch. So like, if they were just talking the whole time, you just have a bunch of different shapes, but like I want to see them like that, and I want to see like weird, like, I don't know, just like weird mouth shapes and stuff, like with their eyes, like maybe they're being like chipmunky, like who knows? It's just getting weird with them is probably my favorite part about it. And because they're just circles, I just make the weirdest faces and then just make their circle around it and then call it a day. So it's kind of fun in that aspect, because everything just starts with drawing a little circle for them, and then the crosshair just you do whatever.
In terms of like one of the like things that are difficult or I think challenging too about this series is that you do have them like interact with like weightlifting equipment pretty frequently, and anything mechanical can be really challenging to do.
It is interesting with the equipment because I try to keep it as simple as possible. So believe it or not, you can get away with a lot with gym equipment, because all you really need is for like a bench press is like a rectangle and some bars. Like I can even simplify it to literally this. Like I have them in situations where there's just like a box under it, and then it'll just be like that. It's just so simple to draw a lot of the gym equipment, because at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of simple shaped things. And it's a lot. It's kind of easy to do the gym equipment. It gets crazy when there's like wider shots, and then you have to draw a lot of different things, and then it's mostly just them laying on stuff, and it's really funny because they have little legs that don't kind of fit. So that's probably the funniest part of the things for me, is just like how foreign they feel in the gym world is probably the best part of it, because it's just
they're very squishy and you have all this like very angular mechanical equipment.
and then you just like draw a big yoked guy, and then there it is, you got Yolk Bros. It's literally this is the mechanic.
So do you have advice for artists who are interested in making their own projects?
Yeah, don't think about it too much. Just make it. It's like really stupid because everyone thinks there's like some trick to making things good, but you can have any idea and make it good if you just make it and see what happens. I mean, I know everybody's got such weird, like, creative hang-ups with like, if I make this one thing, then everyone's going to think I suck or they think my art sucks. But I grew up on webcomics that I saw people draw stick figures, and then 5 years later, they're drawing perfect anatomy. I mean, you know, as long as you have something you like and you want to stick with, it's only going to get better over time. So I don't know why people, well, I do know why. I mean, there's always like the fear of putting all this work into something and no one ever watching it. But like, it happens, you know, like I have videos I upload, I get like no views on, like, makes me sad. But then I'm like, I got more ideas though. Yeah, I got more. So
Yeah. Well, I think part of it too is that like in order to make stuff that's good, you kind of have to be able to make stuff that sucks first.
I definitely agree with that, because when I look back at my older videos, they literally said nothing. Like I said, they were just random conversation stuff like, hey bro, wait. And then it's like, what? It's like, don't skip leg day. Like, that's silly. Like, I had an idea, right? There's no story there. It's not even drawn well. Like, if I go back to like my early drawing, like my first video was literally just that. And it was not that thought out or good, but it was the start of snowballing into something that I can eventually tell longer stories with. Yeah.
You're learning the format.
Yeah. I just think people, the internet has millions and millions of ideas on it, and there's enough people to like what you make. And if you care about it enough to make it, then most people already appreciate that. And, you know, if you have the resources, like I use Toon because it's really great for me, like Harmony and Storyboard Pro. But like, I know people make stuff in Procreate or make stuff on like Photoshop or a lot of the free drawing programs. Like I think you can do like Clip Studio or like there's so many programs right now that give you the versatility to create anything. And there's always somebody there who's going to be like, I like this. To make you feel.
I've seen people animate using like PowerPoint.
Yeah.
You know, if you can create a panel or a slide that works. Although we definitely try to make Storyboard Pro and Harmony as appealing as possible to artists and animators. I do think too, to your point of like not being afraid to make stuff, like that is very much like the ethos of like Newgrounds and the like mid 2000s animations or what was it, webcomic scene, of just like, there be stuff put out, and you know, you go to the early issues of the comics and it's a lot rougher than what you see towards the end of the run. I just think that's kind of part of the process. Yeah,
I mean, the Yolk Bro design doesn't even look the same as it does now. Like the first comic, and I just wanted to make them rounder. And like the eyes are a little different, and like the shape of the face, and like when I was making stuff on Newgrounds, oh my god, a person would make anything on Newgrounds. It was chaotic, and
it's complete anarchy.
It's complete anarchy, and it was awesome because of that, in my opinion. And you know, you just filter out the weird stuff, and you get a lot of cool, like bizarre ideas, and just a bunch of weird stuff, and sometimes like really cool stuff. You're just like, oh wow, did I just watch a cartoon that made me feel something? You know, you're just like, I feel sad, but why? And then it's like this stupid, poorly drawn cartoon, and you're like, I want to make something that makes me feel something. And it's fun. It's cool.
Jake, if you had to recommend like a Newgrounds cartoon for someone to watch, what would you recommend?
I don't know, man. I don't know what I would recommend. And like, I don't know. Jeez. There's one that like scarred me. Like, I remember being scarred by like, oh, you know who, what is it called? I know one that I can recommend. It was like groundbreaking for me when I was younger. Wait, I got to look it up. Well, maybe you can help me. He made like it was a lot of like, okay, it was the creature with like the big smiley mouth with the horns, and he's like kind of like a goat creature, and it was like, I'm so bad at this. The river. I'm looking up right now.
I think that's like what's beautiful about like the sort of era of the internet where there were just a bunch of people making stuff, and it wasn't any attempt to be like, this is a professional thing. It's just, is this anything? Here's a thing I made. What do you think?
Got it. Bitey from Brackenwood.
Yes.
that I recommend, because that thing was so cool when I saw it. Like Water Lollies, The Last of the Dashkin, and Littlefoot, like all those things. Like it was so dope. The animation was incredible. I remember being more inspired. He's
still
by
making
that.
Stuff too.
Yeah, I know, and it's so cool. I remember being more inspired by that than like anything when I was younger, and I saw those animations on Newgrounds. But yeah, it was incredible. So cool. But yeah, that one.
Jake, we are almost out of time. Where can our audience go to see more of your work?
Honestly, just type in the Yolk Bros. I recommend checking out the Instagram, because I've been focusing a lot more on the Instagram lately, and I've been uploading on YouTube, but on Instagram, we upload the comics too, and we're gonna like revamp our website so that it's easier to look at stuff. But I would check out Instagram, the Yolk Bros.
And is there anything you want to talk about in terms of the pilot that you're working on?
The pilot, it's a feat, Mike, and it's going to take forever. And I might look in the future to like maybe try to kickstart it when we have maybe more. Like the Instagram has been growing a lot, which I was like really excited about. Like the community that's growing is very like gym related, so it's pretty cool. And I'm hoping that like maybe if we keep up this momentum, then maybe I can try to get a Kickstarter going to help fund the pilot, because I would love to like have more long form content where we get to know the characters better. And like so far, like in the last couple of weeks on the Instagram, we've been getting like 1 million views average. And if we can keep up that momentum, maybe we can build a larger base to help support bigger, loftier projects. So love to try to get that going. And then we can actually hire people to help us with the pilot. Because right now I'm boarding it all out and I'm really enjoying it. But like it still has to get like, we still have to go into production on it and do the animation and everything. So that's the pie in the sky later goal, get the animated pilot going.
It would be really cool to go to the gym and see a bunch of people wearing like Yolk Bros tank tops and stuff.
That would be pretty cool, actually. Oh my god, that would be really funny and pretty. You know what? I gotta be real. If I saw somebody wearing a Yolk Bro t-shirt that was like making strength gains and heart gains, I'd probably tear up, dude. I'm not even kidding, because that is right. Super cool.
On that note, Jake, thank you so much for taking time to talk about Yolk Bros. And thank you to our audience for taking time to watch our live stream. If you're interested in making your own personal projects in Storyboard Pro, you can download a 21-day trial of Storyboard Pro from our website. The website is toonboom.com. You can see how far you can get. If you don't want to miss our next live stream, we now publish a monthly live stream calendar on our blog at blog.toonboom.com. April's calendar is currently up. And we're going to be running a rerun of our panel discussion on Canadian animation schools on Tuesday, April 15th. And I hope you hang out with us in the chat. All right. Thank you all for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time.